British Armed Forces Minister James Heappey claimed Ukraine had the right to attack targets inside Russian territory with British weapons. Heappey even said Ukraine's attack on Russian territory was perfectly legal, and Britain supported the move, according to Business Insider and Newsmax. The weapon had a range large enough to attack Russia. Heappey's shocking statement came when Russia accused the NATO military alliance of waging a proxy war in Ukraine of not stopping supplying weapons to Kiev. Heappey rejected Russia's claim that NATO was waging a proxy war in Ukraine and increasing the risk of a nuclear war. In an interview with Radio Times on April 26, James Heappey said that during the war, Ukraine had the right to seek to disrupt Russian supplies. During the war, Ukraine needed to attack deep inside the opponent's rear to destroy the logistics lines, fuel supplies, weapons stores. It's part of the war. It is perfectly legitimate for Ukraine to target Russian territory deeply in order to disrupt logistics. If this work is not interrupted, it will directly lead to casualties on the territory of Ukraine, Mr. Heappey stated. Heappey admitted that the weapons provided by the West to Ukraine had a range large enough to strike inside Russian territory and that Kiev could use them for that purpose. Ukraine can target what in my opinion are perfectly legitimate targets to disrupt the Russian military's logistical supply. They made those choices just as the Russians chose to bomb Ukraine's towns and cities, Heappey stated. The United Kingdom has been providing aid for a range of lethal weapons to Ukraine for 2 months since the outbreak of the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, including armored vehicles, drones and anti-tank weapons. UK Defence Secretary Ben Wallace confirmed on Monday 25 April that Britain will soon donate some armoured vehicles equipped with air defence missile launchers to Ukraine. Ukrainian soldiers are also being trained in Britain on how to use 120 new armoured vehicles against the Russian army. Mr. Heappey's remarks came when the oil depots in the Russian city of Bryansk on Monday 25 April went wild. Bryansk is less than 150 kilometers from the Ukrainian border, according to the New York Times. According to Russian officials, the cause of the fire is still under investigation. On that same day, however, Russian forces attacked vital infrastructure throughout Ukraine. The proxy war. Russian Foreign Minister on February 25 accused NATO of participating in the proxy war in Ukraine by providing military aid to Kiev. In essence, NATO is engaged in a war with Russia through a proxy party and is equipping that proxy party, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov stated in Russian state media on April 25. Secretary of State Lavrov also stated that the risks of nuclear conflict are significant, saying that there is a serious and real risk that a Third World War could erupt. However, Mr. Heappey denied the warning, when he told BBC Radio 4 Today that the likelihood of a nuclear war was very small. In a related move, more than 40 states and NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg met on April 26 in Germany to discuss ways to increase security support for Kiev. Russia and Ukraine have not yet commented on the above statement by British Armed Forces Secretary James Heappey. Tt. Putin warns U.S. Steel, NATO, threatens to attack lightning fast any country that interferes in Ukraine. If anyone risks outside interference in the Ukraine war and creating threats of an unacceptable strategic nature against Russia, they should know that our counterattacks will take place at an extremely fast pace, Putin stated on April 27 during a meeting with members of the Legislators' Council, the advisory body to the Russian parliament. Russia earlier warned this week that continued support for Kiev by the West could lead to nuclear war. Now, President Putin continues to express Russia's tough attitude and anger at the continued support of the US and NATO in Kiev. The Russian leader said that he had issued this warning from the beginning of the special military operation in Ukraine while insisting that Russia possessed new weapons that its opponents had never had to do it. We have all the tools to do this. The kind that no one else can be proud to possess at the moment, but will not show. We only use them if necessary. I want everyone to know about that. Every decision on this issue has been made, Putin said, implying Russia's deployment of new supersonic missiles last month. Mr. Putin's statements were made in the context of NATO states and other allies pledging continued support for Ukraine as Russia intensified its offensive in eastern and southern Ukraine. Defense officials have warned that the war in eastern and southern Ukraine will be even more devastating. Moscow has repeatedly declared its special military operation in Ukraine an attempt to denuclearize and defascise in Ukraine. This is a statement that Kiev and the West consider to be incorrect. Western officials and military experts say Russian forces have not yet made any major military strides in Ukraine. Western nations this week declared that they not only wanted to see Russia fail in Ukraine, but also wanted Russia to be so weak that it was impossible to launch a similar attack again. However, Mr. Putin denies claims that Russian forces have not made any major strides in Ukraine by telling Russian lawmakers that, "I would like to emphasize once again that, all the missions of the special military operation we are conducting in Donbass and Ukraine, launched on February 24, will be completed unconditionally." Vicious fighting in Donbass, Ukrainian soldiers fight hard, sobbing for heavy losses. Ukrainian servicemen sadly mourned, even sobbing, when they referred to the heavy losses of the army as they struggled to withstand Russia's raging artillery raids, night and day as well as psychological warfare, at the Donbass battlefield. Ukrainian soldiers fight hard, fighting psychological warfare, according to the Times of Israel. Despite the chaos of the battle for Barvinkov on the eastern front of Ukraine, the country's most famous singer, Sviatoslav Vakarchuk, still appears in jeans and bulletproof vests. A soldier runs near the rock star of the Okean Elzy band to take pictures with his idol. "We have come to raise morale for our soldiers. Maybe I'll sing for them," said the 46-year-old rock star, holding the guitar. "Their mood is great. I mean, of course they're not happy to fight in the field, but they're focused, determined and ready to win. That is why we are here, to help them firmly believe that everything will be fine," Vakarchuk, veteran singer of Ukraine, said. However, according to AFP, it is clear that after 2 months of intense fighting with increased artillery and air strikes by Russian troops as well as Russian forces on this fierce line, it is difficult to maintain optimism. The Russian forces are now all striking to gain control of the Donbass region in the east of Ukraine, making the fighting here more intense than ever. Spiritually, the situation is complicated. It's not even pink. Of course, we are prepared for this war, especially the professional army, but with recruits more complicated, shared Irina Rybakova, officer of the 93rd Brigade of the Ukrainian Army. At the entrance to Barvinkov, about 5 kilometers from the border of the Russian forces, 6 Ukrainian soldiers held a checkpoint. They are always ready to run into the trenches, dug with shovels every day, to hide at any moment if the Russian forces attack. If we didn't run, we would be dead, declared Basil, 51, a veteran old soldier who held checkpoints on the front line with his 22-year-old son Denis. They adjusted the strategy. Now in just a few minutes, the rain of artillery shells would fall all over the town and us, Igor, a 34-year-old soldier, warned with a grimace. Nearby, an iron food pot was placed on a temporary stove, with carrots, potatoes, and onions hanging from the top of a small pot of broth. Local residents have increased supplies of food and everything needed by soldiers, except cigarettes, the Ukrainian soldiers said. And don't take a single drop of alcohol. In a secret, cramped bunker, 6 soldiers lived together. They split trying to sleep between guard shifts. But in Donbass, the night is even worse than the day. The Russian army chose the time of night to strike with the most powerful firepower. This was a psychological war, Rybakova, the 93rd Brigade spokesman, said as she watched the front line with the AFP reporters. Nearby, a 3-meter-long cylindrical object lay in the field. That's the rest of Tochka, a giant ballistic missile from the Soviet era. This terrifying weapon struck the area on Friday night, April 22 near an abandoned school now used as a military base, leaving a huge crater about 15 meters in diameter. To burst into tears because of heavy losses, Ukrainian soldiers speaking to the AFP admitted that their losses were high in the battle to keep Donbass, despite the local military authorities' refusal to provide official casualty numbers. When asked about the casualties, a soldier from the 25th Brigade was angry with the Russians before falling into tears. The soldier said his unit had suffered heavy losses in the last 3 weeks of fighting. I lost a very good teammate. His wife will even have a baby in a few days. I don't want to say anything anymore, said the emotional soldier. Russia announced on April 22 that it wants to take full control of the east and south of Ukraine to create a corridor from Donbass to the Crimea Peninsula that Moscow annexed in 2014. Izium and Kreminna are 2 of the cities in Donbass that have fallen into the hands of Russian forces in recent weeks. The Ukrainian forces are now still focused on stopping and pushing back the Russian army's advance. All the main roads of the region have been destroyed or damaged to slow the progress of Russian forces.